The photograph always looked perfect. Queen Elizabeth stood calm on the balcony, Prince Philip half a step behind her, both smiling at exactly the right moment. To the public, they looked unshakable. Behind closed doors, their marriage was built on duty-control, pride, and a struggle over identity that began long before Elizabeth became queen. Elizabeth was raised to be correct before she understood why correctness mattered. Every room had rules. Every smile carried meaning. Her father, King George VI, became king after Edward VIII gave up the throne. That abdication changed Elizabeth's future overnight. The princess who loved horses and dogs became heir to an institution that could never show fear. Her mother taught her to remain composed and never let the room see her flinch. Elizabeth learned that emotion was real, but it had to be controlled. Philip's childhood taught him something different. Born into the Greek and Danish royal families, he was carried into exile while still young. His father was distant. His mother suffered from illness and disappeared from family life for long periods. His sisters married into German aristocratic families. Philip moved between schools and relatives, never certain how long any home would last. He survived through discipline, sarcasm, self-control, and action. Elizabeth trusted stability. Philip trusted strength. They met when Elizabeth was young. Philip did not treat her like a sacred object. He spoke directly, which fascinated a girl surrounded by people who measured every word. During the Second World War, Philip served in the Royal Navy. They wrote letters, and the relationship deepened. The palace distrusted Philip's foreign background, lack of money, German family connections, and blunt personality. Advisors wanted Elizabeth to choose a safe husband who would never challenge her. Philip was proud and unwilling to become decoration. Elizabeth wanted him anyway. She did not rebel loudly. She simply refused to change her mind. Philip paid heavily for acceptance. He gave up his Greek and Danish titles, became a British subject, adopted the surname Mountbatten, and moved from the Greek Orthodox faith to the Church of England. Each decision removed another part of the identity he had carried through exile. The palace was assigning him a place beside the future monarch, not offering a fully equal role. Elizabeth and Philip married at Westminster Abbey in 1947. Britain still lived with rationing and the scars of war. The wedding was presented as national renewal. She looked serene. He looked strong and devoted. Flowers and ceremony hid the harder truth. The institution had entered their marriage with them. For a short time, Malta gave them another life. Philip served with the Navy. Elizabeth could shop, drive, visit friends, and enjoy ordinary freedom. Philip had work that belonged to him. They were a young couple in their 20s, and those years later seemed among their happiest. Charles was born in 1948. Anne followed in 1950. Publicly, the family looked secure. Privately, each birth reminded them that royal children belonged partly to the nation. Elizabeth wanted stability. Philip wanted the permanent home he had never known. Yet duty pulled Elizabeth away, and Philip sensed that his freedom would shrink as her future approached. That future arrived in 1952. Elizabeth and Philip were in Kenya when King George VI died. Elizabeth became queen. Philip was the first person to bow to her as sovereign. The gesture looked loyal, but it marked a brutal change. His wife was now his monarch. He would stand beside the throne, never on it. Philip's naval career ended. The official language was polite, but the message was firm. The Queen and monarchy needed him. His ambitions came second. Elizabeth had lost her father and inherited the crown at the same moment. She could not grieve like an ordinary daughter. Philip might have comforted her, but he was facing his own loss of purpose. The argument over the family name exposed his resentment. Philip wanted his children to carry Mountbatten. After giving up titles, country, religion, and career, he wanted one mark of himself on the future. The palace, the Queen Mother, and advisors insisted on Windsor. Elizabeth chose Windsor to protect the institution. Philip felt humiliated and complained that he was the only man in Britain unable to give his name to his children. The coronation in 1953 strengthened the public image. Elizabeth looked calm beneath the crown. Philip looked proud and supportive. Behind the scenes, he pushed for modernization while she defended tradition. Philip believed the monarchy had to move faster. Elizabeth believed change must never frighten the public. He used bluntness to claim space. She used stillness to protect order. Philip could be sharp with staff, impatient with delay, and cruelly accurate when he believed someone was foolish. Elizabeth rarely raised her voice. Her anger appeared as silence, precise words, and a look that ended discussion. Philip hated being corrected by a wife who outranked him. Elizabeth hated being provoked by a husband who treated caution as weakness. Their arguments were private cold fronts. A door closed harder than necessary. A remark delivered with a half-smile. A dinner conducted in perfect politeness. Yet Philip still made Elizabeth laugh, and she gave him the stability he had lacked since childhood. The conflict became especially painful around Charles. Philip saw a sensitive boy and feared weakness. He wanted his son hardened by discipline and boarding school. Elizabeth understood Charles's vulnerability, but believed royal children had to endure. Philip pushed for Gordonstoun, the school that had shaped him. Elizabeth doubted it suited Charles, yet allowed Philip to win. Charles struggled with loneliness. Philip believed suffering would strengthen him. Elizabeth feared it might damage him, but refused to create open disunity. Andrew was born in 1960 and Edward in 1964. Philip was playful with small children because they did not care about rank. With older children, especially Charles, he became demanding. Elizabeth loved steadily but rarely theatrically. The family learned that pain should be swallowed and duty performed. Philip pushed the monarchy toward television, believing cameras could make the royal family appear modern and human. Elizabeth feared familiarity would weaken respect. A documentary showed meals, jokes, and domestic scenes. The public was delighted, but the palace soon discovered that access created appetite. Anne married Mark Phillips in 1973. In 1974, she survived an attempted kidnapping in London and resisted while others were injured. Elizabeth tightened security. Philip praised Anne's courage, creating another painful comparison for Charles. Charles had met Camilla, a confident and funny woman who was not intimidated by him. He felt understood. The palace saw complications because Camilla did not fit the untouched fairy tale image expected of a future queen. In 1973, she married Andrew Parker Bowles. The palace viewed that marriage as a convenient solution. Charles experienced it as a private loss that never disappeared. In 1979, Lord Mountbatten was killed in an explosion in Ireland. He had been important to Philip as a link to family and to Charles as a mentor. Philip's grief emerged as anger. Charles turned inward. Elizabeth expected both men to continue their duties. Even grief had to be managed. Pressure grew for Charles to marry. By 1980, an unmarried heir in his 30s was viewed as a problem. Philip demanded a decision. Elizabeth allowed carefully arranged introductions. Lady Diana Spencer appeared to offer the perfect answer. She was young, aristocratic, shy, and ideal for the public story. Diana was only 19 when the spotlight became overwhelming. The engagement was announced in early 1981. During the interview, Charles gave a hesitant answer when asked whether they were in love. Diana heard uncertainty and felt the first wound of a marriage not yet begun. Elizabeth believed Diana could learn endurance. Philip saw strain but assumed pressure would toughen her. The wedding in July 1981 became a global fairy tale. Diana's dress, the carriage, the crowds, and the music created perfect renewal. Yet Diana became a star whose popularity could rival the attention surrounding the Queen. Elizabeth noticed. Philip saw both its usefulness and its danger. The marriage began with needs that did not match. Diana wanted reassurance, closeness, and proof that she had been chosen. Charles wanted peace, routine, and emotional space. Camilla remained in his social world. Diana sensed the old attachment, cried, withdrew, lost weight, and suffered from an eating disorder. In a household where pain was treated as disorder, her suffering became an embarrassment instead of a call for comfort. Elizabeth responded with practical advice. Rest, treatment, discipline, duty. She did not know how to provide the emotional embrace Diana wanted because she had never allowed herself that dependence. Philip sometimes urged Charles to be kind. He believed but his direct pressure could save a person. Diana heard judgment. William was born in 1982 and Harry in 1984. Diana became an involved mother and wanted her sons to feel affection, not only obligation. Philip softened as a grandfather, but still wanted the boys tough and resilient. Elizabeth wanted stability. Charles wanted them prepared for royal life. Diana found in public crowds the warmth she lacked at home. She visited hospitals, touched hands, and looked into people's eyes. The public loved her. The palace grew uneasy. Elizabeth knew that an institution dependent on one person's charm was vulnerable. Philip feared popularity was becoming celebrity and disorder. The more the palace tightened, the more Diana looked outside for support. The more she turned to the public, the more the palace distrusted her. Charles withdrew from conflict. Diana raised the intensity to be heard. Their marriage became a cycle of dismissal, tears, retreat, and anger. In 1986, Andrew married Sarah Ferguson. Her confidence and loud laughter initially delighted Philip. For a short time, the younger generation looked modern and secure. Behind the photographs, several marriages were already weakening. The crisis exploded in 1992. Charles and Diana formally separated. Andrew and Sarah's marriage collapsed. Private recordings and humiliating stories filled newspapers. Windsor Castle caught fire. The flames seemed to mirror the damage spreading through the family. Elizabeth called 1992 an annus horribilis, a horrible year. Even that restrained admission revealed the pressure. Charles admitted infidelity in a 1994 television interview. Diana later spoke publicly about loneliness, bulimia, despair, and the presence of a third person in the marriage. Her words connected with millions, but the palace saw a threat. Elizabeth viewed public confession as dangerous. Philip viewed it as betrayal and weakness. Both. The divorce was finalized in 1996. Diana lost the style of Her Royal Highness but gained freedom. Elizabeth wanted boundaries while ensuring Diana was treated properly as the mother of William and Harry. Philip worried about the boys living inside a public war between their parents. In August 1997, Diana died in a car crash in Paris. Britain erupted in grief. Flowers covered the area outside Kensington Palace. Elizabeth was at Balmoral with William and Harry. Her instinct was to protect them from cameras and allow private mourning. The public interpreted that choice as coldness. Philip understood both sides. He wanted to shield his grandsons, but he also recognized that the monarchy faced an emotional crisis. The family returned to London. Elizabeth spoke to the nation and called Diana an exceptional person. At the funeral, Philip walked beside William and Harry behind their mother's coffin. His hardness became protection, placing him between two grieving boys and a world demanding to watch every expression. Diana's death forced the monarchy to show more visible warmth and made Philip more protective of the younger generation. In 2002, Elizabeth lost both her mother and her sister, Margaret. Philip, older and less restless, became an even more important private anchor. Charles married Camilla in 2005. William married Catherine in 2011, and the palace approached that new marriage with lessons learned from Charles and Diana. As Philip aged, he withdrew from public duties. The battles with Elizabeth became less intense because time had settled the questions of power, identity, and family. What remained was a seasoned partnership, a shared joke, a glance across a room, a hand offered without ceremony. Philip died in 2021. At his funeral, Elizabeth sat alone because of pandemic restrictions. The image of the Queen in black, isolated inside the chapel, revealed what decades of control had hidden. Her reserve had never meant an absence of feeling. It was how she carried feeling without allowing it to break her. Philip had been her companion, challenger, protector, and irritant. He made her laugh and made her furious. He stood behind her in public because he understood the job, and fought for space in private because he refused to disappear. Elizabeth gave him stability but placed duty above his pride. He gave her honesty, often with a sharpness that wounded. Their marriage lasted because neither believed in quitting. Love in their world looked like endurance, showing up while angry, protecting each other before cameras, and carrying private pain without letting the institution fall. They were two people shaped by fear, exile, obligation, and history. Together they held the monarchy steady through war, social change, scandal, family collapse, and public grief. But the armor that protected them also wounded the next generation. Their story shows that control can save an institution while quietly damaging a family. and that a marriage can be powerful, loyal, and enduring without being